You did not arrive at this point by accident. As the world grows louder and the new year stands in front of you like an unwritten page, something inside you has shifted. Not panic. Not pressure. Something quieter. A clear inner knowing that this time, change has to be real. Not cosmetic. Not temporary. You are not just worn down by noise or overload. You are exhausted from fighting yourself. And that is exactly where this moment finds you. Not as hype. Not as a rush of motivation. But as a return. A return to the part of you that wants calm, that needs clarity, that remembers what it feels like to be grounded. The Stoics understood something most people forget. The answers are not out there. Not in titles. Not in chaos. Not in approval. They are in how you meet life, moment by moment. Freedom was not something they chased. It was something they practiced, quietly, deliberately. If that speaks to you, if you are ready for strength without noise, control without force, and power without performance, subscribe for yourself. Let this be a conscious choice. A first step toward living with intention. Toward becoming who you were meant to be. Most people do not listen until everything starts breaking. They wait for the crash. The job collapses. The relationship ends. The drive disappears. Only then do they search for meaning. But the signals were always there. So easy to ignore. That feeling of restlessness even when life looks fine. That is the first warning. The constant mental tension when nothing is technically wrong. That is the second. These are not random. They are alerts. Proof that you have been functioning outwardly but disconnected inwardly. The real collapse never begins on your calendar. It begins in how you see the world. You have been reacting for so long that you forgot how to respond with choice. Days pass without reflection. Emotions take control without being questioned. Decisions are made from pressure instead of values. These cracks stay hidden until one day they split everything apart. It is easy to blame the noise, the deadlines, the expectations. But look closer. The world is not what overwhelms you. It is your lack of awareness of your own mind. You handed over control and settled into reaction. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Yet most people never examine their reactions. Anger shows up and they speak. Fear appears and they retreat. Fatigue hits and they quit. No pause. No thought. Just impulse. But you are not a machine. You are not an animal. You are a thinking being with depth. And depth demands reflection. Every real shift begins at the same point. When you stop saying, "I don't know why I do this," and start asking, "What am I refusing to see?" That is where awareness lives. It does not arrive loudly. It shows up quietly. When you notice that your routine is just repetition without meaning. When anxiety stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like a signal. A wake-up call. You do not need to destroy your life to change it. You need to stop moving through it asleep. When you live in reaction, everything becomes a threat. One email ruins your day. One look makes you doubt yourself. One mistake sends you spiraling. Not because life is cruel, but because you lost your way back to yourself. This is where Stoicism is unmatched. Your mind is your home. And when it is neglected, anything from outside can take over. You cannot stop the storms, but you can strengthen what stands inside them. The shaking is not here to ruin you. It is here to reveal what was never stable. And what collapses under pressure was never meant to support you. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That truth makes people uncomfortable. Because it means suffering is not always something done to them. It means responsibility. And responsibility is not guilt. It is freedom. When you see the patterns you never questioned, you stop demanding new results from old behavior. You slow down. You reflect. You change. Awareness is where all growth begins, and it is not comfortable. It removes the mask. You see how much of your day is driven by fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of falling behind. Fear of not being enough. You see how often busyness replaced meaning. How much you do just to avoid facing what matters. That moment can feel like breaking. But it is not. It is clarity. Because only when the false version of you starts to fall away can the real one emerge. That is why 2026 must be different. Not louder. Not faster. Not packed with goals stacked on a weak base. But deeper. More honest. More rooted. You are not here to repeat the same identity with better branding. You are here to reconnect with what was buried under the noise. The inner shaking does not come to destroy your life. It comes to show you where you have been absent. Where comfort mattered more than growth. Where the world's volume drowned out your own wisdom. When you meet that disruption with awareness instead of fear, with reason instead of impulse, everything shifts. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become steadier, stronger, quieter inside. And from that place, you stop surviving life and start shaping it. So the question is no longer how to stop the shaking. The question is, what have you been building on weak ground? Because once you see it, you can rebuild. Once you feel it, you can listen. And once you wake up, you do not go back. Not because it is simple, but because living numb is no longer an option. Growth begins the moment you stop running from your own signals and walk straight toward them. It starts now. There is a place within you that does not move when everything else does. It does not shrink under criticism. It does not fall apart when plans fail. It does not need permission to feel complete. The Stoics called this the inner citadel. Not as an idea, but as something real and accessible. At some point you stopped returning to it. Life pulled you outward. Roles, expectations, noise. You started believing peace had to be earned or given. But it never lived out there. It was always inside. Locked away only because you forgot the way back. Every panic response, every tight breath, every racing thought comes from the same belief. That the world can reach inside you and decide your worth. That someone's opinion or absence can break you. It cannot. It only feels real when you lose touch with your center. When your sense of value drifts into other people's hands. The citadel is not built from force. It is built from stillness. Not defended by walls, but by awareness. The more you remember this, the less life's pressure controls you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." That is the trap. You do not need chaos to feel overwhelmed. You only need chaotic thinking. You do not need danger to feel afraid. You only need to believe the voice that tells you that you are unsafe, lacking, or powerless. That voice is not from your center. It is learned noise. The world taught you to compare, rush, prove, and perform. Your inner fortress never asked that of you. It only asks you to return. There is a quiet pain that comes from fixing what was never broken. Chasing approval. Forcing productivity. Pushing harder, hoping peace will follow. But peace is not a reward for self-criticism. It is the result of self-trust. Strength does not come from adding more. It comes from letting go of what was never yours. That is what the fortress gives you. A place untouched by external chaos. No matter how loud life becomes, it cannot reach what is rooted in presence. Most people think peace will come when things settle down. When people change. When circumstances improve. That kind of peace is fragile. It lasts only while conditions cooperate. But life will always change. The citadel is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about being unshaken by it. When you remember how to rest in your own awareness, nothing outside you controls what comes next. You rebuild this place quietly. Through honesty. Through still moments where you tell yourself the truth. You remember that you are not your labels, your income, your mistakes, or even your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. The one who decides what stays and what leaves. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Maybe this moment is not here to spare you discomfort. Maybe it is here to remind you that you are stronger than you forgot. You lose your balance the moment you forget who you are. Every emotion that throws you off is quietly asking the same thing. Did you step away from your own center? When anxiety shows up, it means you started measuring yourself against things you cannot control. When anger flares, it means you handed your peace to someone else. When desperation creeps in, it means your calm is now tied to an outcome you cannot guarantee. That is not weakness. That is forgetfulness. And the answer is not to push harder or win louder. It is to come back inward. To remember that your calm was never taken from you. You were just searching for it in places that were never yours. No amount of praise, success, or certainty can replace the strength of being steady inside yourself. And when you return to that inner ground, you do not withdraw from life. You become sharper. You do not disengage. You move with intention. Your words slow down. Your reactions turn into choices. You protect your time, your focus, your values, not through force, but through quiet discipline. Because now you know what belongs to you and what never did. Aristotle said knowing yourself is the beginning of wisdom. But that knowing goes far deeper than labels or history. It is recognizing the part of you that loss cannot touch. The part that does not rise with applause or fall with silence. The part that stays when everything else shifts. That is what the inner stronghold preserves. And the more often you return to it, the less you depend on life going perfectly. Carl Jung described the self as a circle with no clear edge and no fixed center. In that sense, this inner ground is not escape. It is how you live. It means moving forward while staying rooted. Enjoying joy without clinging. Feeling grief without breaking. Accepting praise without swelling. Facing rejection without shrinking. This is not numbness. It is inner structure. And that kind of structure is rare. That kind of structure is powerful. No one will constantly remind you to return to it. The world will pull at you nonstop. It will provoke reaction. It will distract you with noise, comparison, and performance. That is why you must pause yourself. When you wake up, when your focus slips, when someone's words replay too loudly in your mind, stop and ask, did I step away from my center? And then return, not by escaping, but by being present, by breathing, by letting go of what was never yours to carry. This inner ground is not imaginary. It is yours by nature. But it must be remembered, cared for, and entered daily. The storm can rage. The noise can grow. But when your foundation is internal, you are no longer pulled in every direction. You do not need the world to settle. You only need to remember where calm actually lives. And it is here, always waiting for you. Most people spend their lives trying to fix what was never theirs to control. They build their days around outcomes they cannot predict. They worry about how they appear. They believe peace will come once everything outside finally falls into place. But life does not work that way. And deep down, you already know it. You felt it every time you tried to manage someone's opinion and felt drained. Every time you planned the perfect future and watched it unravel. Every time you poured energy into something that never asked for it. There is a quiet kind of suffering that grows from the illusion of control. Because no matter how tightly you hold on, life moves on its own terms. Here is the clarity that cuts through it. Control is not a feeling. It is a choice. And it has nothing to do with the world. It has everything to do with you. You cannot decide what happens. You cannot lock in results or command others. But you can choose how you meet what happens. You can decide who you will be in uncertainty. That choice may seem smaller than controlling your environment, but it is the only power that cannot be taken from you. This is what the Stoics meant by separating what is yours from what is not. And once you live by that line, everything becomes clearer. Think about how much effort you have poured into things that would not change. The unanswered messages. The silence. The opportunity that slipped away. The person who never truly understood you. You replay it. You analyze it. You stay tense, thinking it will protect you. But worry is not preparation. It is resistance pretending to be strategy, and it exhausts you. What if that energy could be reclaimed and used where it actually counts? Your thoughts. Your intentions. Your character. Imagine the strength that grows when you stop trying to bend life and learn how to stand calmly inside it. Emotions pass. Panic fades. Excitement fades. But your choices remain. How you carry yourself when someone disappoints you. How you speak when anger rises. How you move forward when plans collapse. These are yours. They shape your life far more than anything outside your control ever will. The Stoics never promised comfort. They offered clarity. Because clarity keeps you from wasting strength on storms you were never meant to stop. Seneca said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And if you look honestly, most pain did not come from events, but from fighting them. You thought control meant forcing outcomes. But real control is adjusting perspective. The moment you stop needing life to go your way is the moment peace begins to surface. Not because life becomes easier, but because your mind steadies. Many people confuse control with tension. They believe control means staying tight, alert, ready to fix everything. That is not control. That is fear. And fear makes you reactive. It convinces you that effort creates certainty. But the Stoic does not chase certainty. The Stoic seeks alignment with reason, values, and what can actually be chosen. When you live within your power, everything else loosens its grip. And a calm appears that praise cannot inflate and chaos cannot shake. There is real relief in letting go of what you cannot manage. In no longer tying your worth to someone else's behavior. In stopping the endless rehearsal of conversations and outcomes. In doing your part fully and then releasing the rest. That is not weakness. That is mastery. It takes strength to stay on your side of the equation. It takes clarity to let the world spin while you remain grounded. That stillness is not detachment. It is wisdom. Epictetus said freedom comes from ignoring what lies beyond your control. That freedom does not feel like force. It feels like breath, like space in your chest, like quiet in your mind. When you release the weight of outcomes, your movement changes. You decide from clarity, not urgency. You speak from values, not fear. You give without conditions. You let go without panic. You stop gripping life so tightly. The world will keep moving. People will misunderstand you. Things will shift, break, and surprise you. That will not change. What must change is your relationship to it. You are not here to manage existence. You are here to show up, act with intention, and then release. Not because it does not matter, but because that is where responsibility ends and real power begins. Even Aristotle emphasized deliberate choice over impulse. Virtue, he believed, lived in action, not emotion. So the question is no longer can I control this? The question is this mine to control at all? And if it is not yours to suffer over either. When this becomes clear, you begin to protect your peace the way you protect your time. You stop handing it to opinions, headlines, markets, or someone else's mood. You learn to say this is not mine, and you step back. That is not avoidance. That is clarity. And clarity creates peace, not a fragile kind, but the kind that holds you steady when everything else moves. In a world obsessed with results, your calm will stand out. Quieter. Less reactive. Harder to shake. Some will mistake it for distance. But you will know better. You are not detached. You are focused. You are not cold. You are clear. You simply stopped giving away your most valuable asset, your response, to things that never earned it. Control is not something you find. It is something you choose. And the more often you choose what belongs to you, the stronger you become. Not because you can bend the world, but because the world no longer bends you. That strength is subtle, often unnoticed. And it changes everything, starting with you. You have felt it before, that sense that life pushes back no matter how carefully you plan. You prepare. You push. You adjust. And still something slips. Delays. Fears. Letdowns. You brace yourself. You tighten your grip. And without realizing it, you turn your own peace into a battlefield. But life is not meant to be overpowered. It cannot be forced into stillness. It moves like water. And water does not respond to pressure. Most people are not tired because they are moving too fast. They are tired because they are resisting what moves at all. Worn down not by effort, but by friction. By fighting what already is. You know the feeling when you're stuck in that headspace. Small problems feel personal. Minor setbacks feel like attacks. Everything rubs you the wrong way. But here's the hard truth. Life is not coming after you. It's moving forward. And when you try to stand still in the middle of that movement, it doesn't stop. It drags you. Not out of spite, not out of cruelty, but because that's how motion works. Letting go gets misunderstood all the time. People hear it and think it means quitting. It doesn't. Letting go is not weakness. It's judgment. It's deciding not to burn energy trying to control what refuses to be controlled. That choice takes strength. It takes awareness. And it's usually where real power begins. This isn't about giving up or sitting back. It's about knowing where effort actually matters. When you stop fighting what won't move, you free yourself to work with what will. You learn how to adjust, how to steer, how to move forward instead of constantly pushing against resistance. There's a quiet confidence in knowing when to shift instead of shove. In realizing that sometimes it's not the plan that needs more effort, but your perspective that needs to change. You don't always need a smarter strategy. Sometimes you need to stop demanding that reality follow your expectations. The Stoics never preached inaction. They valued accuracy. Seeing things as they are, not as you wish they would be. Control feels like safety, but if that were true, the most controlling people would be calm. And we both know they're usually not. Control doesn't settle the mind. It keeps it tense. It ties your peace to things that were never stable. The market, the weather, other people's choices, deadlines that shift. And every time you insist these things stay fixed for your comfort, you hand your peace to uncertainty. That's not power. That's dependence. You don't need to stop the current. You need to understand it. Some days that means slowing down. Some days it means adjusting direction. And some days it means releasing the very thing you were sure you needed. That isn't failure. That's movement. Forward, flexible, aware. Carl Jung said, "What you resist not only persists but grows." That line hits because it's true. The harder you fight a situation, the more space it takes in your mind. But when you stop wrestling with it, it shrinks. Not because it changed, but because you did. You've seen this before. The talk you avoided that turned out manageable. The loss that forced a new path you never would have chosen but ended up grateful for. The plan that collapsed and quietly made room for something better. None of those came from force. They came from trust. Not blind trust in destiny, but trust in your ability to respond. That's what it means to navigate instead of panic. You're not drifting. You're present. You're aware. And you start to see that when things don't go your way, it doesn't mean they're going the wrong way. You just don't see the full picture yet. And that's fine. You're not meant to control the future. You're meant to meet what's in front of you. That shift lifts weight. The pressure to predict everything. To manage every outcome. You still care, but you care differently. Smarter. Your peace is no longer dependent on life sticking to your script. Epictetus reminded us that events themselves are neutral. Our judgment gives them weight. So the surge isn't the enemy. The turn in the current isn't defeat. It's motion. And your strength is shown in how you meet it. Do you tense and sink, or breathe, adjust, and keep moving? Even Plato spoke to this idea in his own way. He believed wisdom came from recognizing patterns, not forcing outcomes. Wisdom isn't rigid. It's purposeful flexibility. And when you build that kind of inner flexibility, you don't shatter under pressure. You bend. You adapt. You stay intact. So if you've been exhausted, stretched thin, trying to hold everything together, it might not be because you're incapable. It might be because you've been trying to stop something that was never meant to stop. Maybe it's time to loosen your grip. Not to surrender, but to move intelligently. To work with momentum instead of fighting it. What you resist drains you. What you engage with shapes you. This year isn't asking you to push harder. It's asking you to move wiser. To stop demanding control and start noticing how much lighter things feel when you align with reality instead of arguing with it. That's not quitting. That's maturing. It's choosing clarity over panic, direction over resistance. Let go. Not because you don't care, but because your energy matters. Let go so you can move forward instead of spinning in place. Most people wait for perfect conditions before they feel okay. They wait for calm skies, stable ground, the right moment. But life doesn't offer guarantees. The weather shifts. Storms linger. Light doesn't always arrive on schedule. Still, you are not powerless. You never were. Your power was never in controlling the sky. It was in how you cared for what was beneath you. Your mind is like soil. It can grow strength or decay. If you ignore it, it doesn't stay empty. It grows whatever gets planted, intentionally or not. That's where many people lose their way. They wait. They distract themselves. And while they're watching the horizon, weeds take root. Avoidance. Small fears that grow quietly. Then one day they look around and barely recognize their own life. But you don't need perfect conditions to grow something good. You need attention. You need to notice what's growing and decide if it belongs there. Remove what doesn't, not with anger, but with awareness. The mind isn't a war zone. It's a garden. And even neglected ground responds to care. Ask yourself what you're feeding. Every repeated thought is a seed. Every habit is water. Every ignored feeling sends roots deeper. Damage doesn't always show immediately, but it builds. Thoughts turn into patterns. Patterns become identity. Identity shapes direction. That direction isn't fixed. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In a world obsessed with more, real strength is simplicity. Tending your own space. Understanding that wealth is internal. A calm mind. Clear values. Stability that storms can't take away. The mistake is blaming the weather. Every gardener faces wind, heat, and rain. The difference is preparation. Adaptation. Showing up daily regardless of conditions. That's what Stoicism teaches. Discipline, not detachment. Clarity, not avoidance. You don't wait for peace. You build it. Thought by thought. Habit by habit. Choice by choice. And the hard seasons matter too. The cold days that strip hope and force reflection. They prune what's weak. They strengthen what's real. They teach you what can last. You don't run from those moments. You learn. You adjust. You let them refine you. Aristotle said we become what we repeatedly do. Excellence isn't a single action. It's a practice. It's returning to the ground every day, especially when progress feels invisible. Pulling what doesn't serve you. Feeding what does. Every pause before reacting matters. Every choice for clarity builds roots. Every time you stop comparing your path to someone else's, you protect your peace. That's how you tend your life. Storms will come. They always do. But storms pass. Soil can be restored. What matters is that you stay present enough to care for what's yours. Do not walk away from it. Do not hand your inner life over to the world and expect it to protect what only you can guard. Your inner space is not the world's job. It belongs to you. And the more you take responsibility for it, the harder it becomes for anything to shake you. Marcus Aurelius warned us long ago, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But that strength is often misunderstood. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not explode. It is calm, steady, grounded. It does not need applause because it already knows what it has survived. It does not fight the storm. It adjusts. It moves forward. It grows anyway. So maybe this is not the year to control every outcome. Maybe this is the year to protect what is already yours. Your thoughts. Your environment. Your attention. Let the storms show up. Let the pressure rise. You are not empty-handed. You have discipline. You have awareness. You have choice. And above all, you have your inner ground. Do not wait for peace to appear on its own. Build it. Maintain it. Defend it. It has always been inside you, waiting for you to return. Then something happens. You arrive late. The meeting has already begun. The payment fails. Someone makes a comment that cuts deeper than expected. The moment itself is real. But what follows inside you is something else entirely. That part comes from you. From the meaning you attach without stopping to question it. Being late suddenly becomes proof that you are careless. Losing money becomes evidence that everything is falling apart. One remark turns into confirmation that you are not enough. But none of that is fact. It is judgment. And judgment, more than the event itself, is what does the real damage. We like to believe pain comes from the outside. But the truth is, the world rarely cuts that deep on its own. What hurts most is the blade we turn inward when we accept a thought without challenging it. This is the detail most people overlook. The mind does not simply record reality. It explains it. And those explanations shape everything. That is why two people can face the same situation and walk away with opposite outcomes. One calls it failure. The other calls it information. One sees rejection. The other sees direction. Same moment. Different meaning. and that meaning decides what comes next. This is where Stoicism is often misunderstood. It is not about shutting down emotions. It is about tracing them back to their source. Most suffering does not come from the moment itself. It comes from the spiral afterward. The assumptions. The self-blame. The mental predictions of everything that will now go wrong. One small event becomes a disaster only because we push it downhill. Carl Jung spoke about projection, the unconscious stories we place on others, on situations, on ourselves. Until those stories are exposed, we are not living in reality. We are living in distortion. If someone criticizes you and your mind instantly says, "They think I am a joke," that belief will shape your mood, your behavior, your confidence. You pull back. You harden. You reshape yourself to avoid that feeling again. All of it triggered by a conclusion that may not even be true. What makes this dangerous is the speed. A look, the tone, a delay. Before you even pause, the judgment has already written a paragraph in your head. This is why the Stoics practiced something radical for their time: awareness without attachment. They trained themselves to pause and ask, what am I telling myself right now? Is it useful? Is it accurate? Most people never ask. They let the thought become law. But a thought is not a fact. It is a filter. And filters can be cleaned. Aristotle observed, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. You can feel an emotion without letting it take control. You can notice a judgment rising and still choose not to obey it. This is not suppression. It is authority. Because when you follow every judgment blindly, you give up control of your experience. When you slow down and examine it, you create space. And in that space, choice returns. This work is not impressive. It will not earn attention. But it will protect you from unnecessary suffering. It will anchor you when the world pulls you toward panic, drama, and endless overthinking. You do not need to eliminate emotion. You need to become honest about the voice that labels everything before you even notice it is speaking. Some things deserve grief. Some things deserve resistance. But clarity matters. If someone disrespects you, that matters. But deciding that it means you are worthless is a judgment, not truth. If you fall short of your own standards, learn from it. Do not bury yourself in shame. Shame is often judgment turned inward, and it grows strongest where it is never questioned. The Stoics were not numb. They were disciplined. They understood emotions are not enemies, but they are not leaders either. Feelings point toward something, but they do not always explain what. That is your responsibility. To pause. To listen. To sort through the noise until something real appears. That is philosophy in practice. Not escaping the world, but seeing it clearly and responding with intention. Judgments are subtle. They dress themselves as truth, but they are often just defenses against uncertainty. When something goes wrong and you immediately think, "I am cursed," you have wrapped the moment in meaning. But meaning is flexible. You can change it. You can replace panic with presence. You can turn offense into insight. But only if you slow down long enough to realize, this is not the world attacking me. This is me interpreting a moment through a lens that needs cleaning. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That is not a motivational line. It is a survival principle. The moment you stop giving judgments authority, you take your life back. You notice the insult without absorbing it. You experience the setback without turning it into disaster. You see a flaw without turning it into a sentence. This is where freedom actually begins. Not by fixing the world, but by correcting how you see it. The world will remain messy. People will remain imperfect. Life will remain unpredictable. None of that needs to control your inner state. Peace does not require ideal conditions. It requires better interpretations. And those are always within reach. So when something happens this week, pause. Before reacting, ask yourself, what story am I telling myself right now? Is this fact, or is it fear pretending to be truth? That pause may not change the situation, but it will change how you carry it. And how you carry it shapes everything. Judgment is a lens. Clean it often. Inspect it carefully. And remember, you always have the option to see more clearly. You walk into a room and instantly scan faces. You are not searching for danger. You are searching for approval. A smile. A nod. A sign you belong. When you get it, your chest opens. When you do not, even slightly, something inside tightens. You tell yourself this is normal. Just social instinct. But something deeper is happening. You have handed your sense of worth to people who do not know your story. And it is draining you quietly, steadily. At some point, most of us learn to survive by blending in, by pleasing, by reading the room and adjusting ourselves to match expectations. And maybe it worked for a time. You avoided tension. You earned praise. But slowly, something else faded. You forgot how it felt to speak without waiting for a response. You forgot how to move without checking if eyes were on you. You began living like someone on display, always performing, always waiting for approval. That is not life. That is abandonment of self. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Becoming requires distance. Not arrogance. Not isolation. Just the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to be chosen to feel whole. When opinions rule you, you become your own jailer. The cage is not locked. It is built from the need to be liked. And every time someone reacts differently than you hoped, the bars tighten. But the key has always been in your hand. Seneca wrote, "He who seeks approval is dependent on others to live." He was not rejecting connection. He was warning against dependency. There is a difference between caring about people and being controlled by them, between empathy and erosion. And that line is crossed every time you silence yourself just to keep someone comfortable, every time you water. You learn early how to shrink yourself, how to bite your tongue, how to nod along even when every part of you disagrees, because staying quiet feels safer than being rejected. But real peace is not born from compliance. It comes from alignment. Alignment with what you believe, what you say, and how you live. There is a version of you waiting just out of sight. Not louder, not more dramatic, just more honest. The one who speaks clearly even when their voice trembles. The one who walks away when something feels wrong, even if no one follows. That version does not care about applause. They care about being complete. And the moment you stop trying to fit into roles that drain you, something shifts. That is where confidence begins. Not the kind that grabs attention, but the kind that does not need it. The world will always comment on your choices, your body, your work, your silence, your courage. If you twist yourself to match every opinion, you stop being a person and turn into a reaction. And nothing feels stable when your sense of self is built on approval. Praise changes fast. One day you are celebrated. The next day you are questioned. You cannot anchor your inner life to something that blows with the wind. It is like trying to build a house during a quake. Nothing stands. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" ask, "Do I respect myself right now?" That question hits harder. It pulls you back to your own center. Because you can spend your entire life pleasing people and still feel empty. You can post, perform, and agree, then lie awake wondering why it all feels hollow. Applause is not the same as alignment. Being visible is not the same as being known. This is not a call to rebel. It is a call to return. You are not here to impress. You are here to express. Not to prove yourself, but to live as yourself. You do not need stronger opinions. You need a calmer mind. One that does not panic when someone disapproves. One that does not fall apart when someone disagrees. That is the difference between chasing peace and being peace. One depends on the outside. The other is built from within. You are not a product. You are not a brand. You are not the sum of likes, shares, or approval. You are a human being with layers, with conflict, with a truth that will not always be comfortable for others. And sometimes the strongest move is not to explain or defend. It is to stand quietly in who you are, even when no one claps. Think about how much energy you have spent adjusting yourself for others. Now imagine if that energy came back to you. Imagine creating because it excites you, not because it performs well. Speaking because it is true, not because it is safe. showing up without masks or filters or the need for reassurance. That life is not loud, but it is free. And freedom does not ask permission. Breaking this habit is not about cutting people off. It is about discernment, knowing when to listen and when to let go, knowing the difference between feedback that sharpens you and noise that shrinks you. Not every opinion deserves your peace. Not every reaction requires your adjustment. Not every rejection means you are wrong. You do not have to become cold to be free. You just have to stop bargaining with your worth in every room you enter. The most powerful people are rarely the loudest. They are the ones who stay steady when misunderstood. They do not chase attention. They do not treat validation like oxygen. They move with quiet authority built from years of choosing integrity over popularity. That is not arrogance. That is self-respect. You have spent enough time editing yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. It is time to build something of your own. A mindset. A direction. A life that does not collapse when questioned and does not depend on applause to feel real. You are not here to be liked. You are here to become. Becoming is often unseen and uncelebrated, but it is always worth it. Because the moment you stop asking the world to recognize you, you finally recognize yourself. And when that happens, something releases. The cage opens. The need quiets. Peace returns. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped handing it control. Often, the strongest person in the room is the quietest. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they have already said it to themselves enough times that it no longer needs to be announced. In a world addicted to noise, arguments, and performance, there is a rare form of power that does not seek attention. It simply exists. It moves calmly, listens carefully, and carries the presence of someone who has nothing left to prove. That kind of strength lasts, even though most people overlook it because it is not flashy. We are taught that power is loud and dominant. But if you look closely at people who have mastered themselves, you see something else. They do not rush to correct. They do not panic when misunderstood. They do not fight to win every conflict. They engage only when it matters. And even then, they do it with restraint. That level of control is not natural. It is built slowly. In silence. In discipline. In moments no one sees. Seneca once said, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." Strength is one of them. Not the kind you display, but the kind you earn by facing yourself, outgrowing your reactions, and refusing to shout just to feel seen. When you are grounded, your presence speaks. And nothing unsettles people more than someone who cannot be provoked. They do not chase approval. They do not flinch. Speaking to them feels solid, steady, immovable. Strength is not about lacking emotion. It is about not being ruled by it. Not suppressing feelings but mastering them. Letting them rise, letting them pass, and still choosing your response. That is not weakness. That is control. And control does not yell. It watches. It waits. It moves only when movement matters. Silence is often mistaken for passivity. But there is a silence that carries weight. The kind that makes people pay attention. In 2026, you do not need more noise. You need less inner chaos. Less reacting. Less explaining. You need to be so clear with yourself that you stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to win every exchange. That urge is what drains you. What strengthens you is the calm that comes after you release it. Carl Jung observed that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate what matters. And those who live with depth learn they do not need to explain everything. They live it. They embody their values instead of advertising them. Their life becomes the message. Their consistency becomes their mark. And their silence, calm and unapologetic, becomes their presence. You do not need to raise your voice to be heard. You need inner clarity. Clarity does not shout. It speaks once and moves forward. That is strength. Setting boundaries without begging. Walking away without threats. Leading without applause. That strength does not grow from ego. It grows from purpose. Think of a tree in a storm. It does not argue with the wind. It does not fight the rain. It stays rooted. That is you when you stop reacting to every challenge. When you realize you do not owe a response to every provocation. When you treat your energy like it matters because it does. Every time you defend yourself to someone who never respected you, you lose ground. And in 2026, you take it back. Not by being louder, but by standing firmer. People think power means fearlessness. Real power is calm in fear. It is doubt without surrender. It is staying steady when everything shakes. That is mastery. And mastery is quiet. The most dangerous opponent is not the loud one. It is the one who cannot be pulled into chaos. The one who knows who they are and will not be moved. That is what silence gives you. Not distance, but leverage. Not indifference, but control. You can care deeply and still choose your response. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes it means nothing outside you has power over you. In that pause between event and response, silence becomes your strength. Intentional, grounded, unshakable. The stillness that builds your inner fortress. There is a kind of strength people feel before you ever speak. They sense it. They respect it. 2026 is not asking you to get louder or push harder. It is asking you to get grounded. To stop spending energy on conversations that go nowhere. To stop explaining yourself to people who are not walking your path. To let outcomes speak instead of arguments. To let consistency earn your respect for you. When your focus sharpens, your presence changes. It unsettles people, not because you demand attention, but because you no longer need it. Let this be the year you stop debating with those who are not building anything real. Let this be the year you step away from the noise and move at your own pace. Let this be the year your calm becomes your armor. Because nothing disrupts the world more than someone who cannot be rattled. And when you finally reach that place where silence does the talking, you realize that was the strength you were searching for all along. Most people spend their lives trying to outrun their past. Very few learn how to make peace with it. And peace does not mean approval. It does not mean pretending the pain was fine. It means deciding that it will not destroy you. It means refusing to lose another year to anger over things you cannot undo. Amor fati. Love of fate is not poetic language. It is a choice. A discipline. A decision to stop fighting what cannot be controlled and start using it. It begins the moment you stop asking why this happened to me and start asking what will I do with this now? There is always a moment. Sometimes quiet. Sometimes brutal. A moment where what you expected collapses. A betrayal. A loss. A plan you trusted that falls apart without warning. In that instant, your instincts beg for escape. You want to rewind time. Choose differently. Erase the pain. But you cannot. No one can. And once that truth settles in, you face the real question. If I cannot change the past, will I let it rule me? Or will I walk through it and come out changed? Amor fati does not mean enjoying the storm. It means becoming someone who grows because of it. You gather the broken pieces and you build again. You take the silence left behind by someone who walked away and you finally hear yourself. You take failure and instead of letting it define you, you let it sharpen you. Slowly, you realize that what felt like punishment was actually preparation. And over time, it stops feeling like something that happened to you and starts feeling like something that woke you up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes brightness out of everything thrown into it." That is amor fati. Not passive acceptance, but active change. Taking even the worst moments and turning them into fuel. Not to burn others, but to burn stronger. There is a quiet power in someone who has walked through fire and stopped demanding justice. They have moved past blame, past bitterness. Not because they forgot, but because they chose to carry it differently. You were never meant to stay untouched. You were meant to be tested. Shit. What broke your heart? What humbled your ego? What stripped away the illusions you lived by? That was not the end. It was the start of something deeper. Maybe you had to lose your way to see a path that only appeared when there was nothing left to protect. A path built not on control or perfection, but on courage and clarity. A path where you move forward not despite what happened, but because of it. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Every day you cling to the fantasy of a different past, you delay becoming anything new. Amor fati is not blind positivity. It is radical honesty. It is looking at the wound and saying, "You no longer own me." It is acknowledging pain without letting it become your identity. It is allowing the story to move forward instead of freezing time at the moment of loss. You can spend a lifetime resisting reality, fighting what already is. Or you can breathe, loosen your grip, and start building from exactly where you stand. Maybe the worst thing that ever happened to you also handed you the tools to become stronger than you ever planned to be. Maybe the thing you hated most forced you to grow. Maybe fate is not a fixed road, but raw material. And who you become depends on how you shape it. You were taught to chase comfort, but comfort never built depth. Nothing easy ever carved wisdom into you. That comes from falling apart, from letting go, from sitting in silence long enough to hear yourself again, from understanding that while you cannot choose every event, you can always choose what it turns you into. And the moment you do, your relationship with life shifts. You stop fearing loss. You stop being shocked by hardship. You meet everything with steadiness. Not because it is easy, but because you no longer expect it to be. Epictetus said, "Do not wish events to happen as you want them to, but want them to happen as they do, and life will go well." That is not surrender. It is alignment. Living in step with reality instead of fighting it. Finding opportunity inside obstacles. Clarity inside chaos. Strength inside sorrow. When you see life this way, you stop repainting the past and start using it. Everything you have lived through, every mistake, every heartbreak, every setback, was not meant to crush you. It was meant to teach you. And that understanding makes you dangerous in the best way. Because someone who no longer fears fate cannot be controlled. They cannot be broken by outcomes. Their power is not tied to circumstances. It comes from their ability to rise. That is the gift hidden inside a more fatty. Freedom from being owned by your history. The courage to say, "This too is mine." You stop demanding explanations from life. You stop waiting for everything to make sense. Instead, you create meaning from what is messy. You build a self that can stand in the storm and say, "This did not end me. It formed me." Your past does not need to be rewritten. It needs to be understood. Not as the thing that held you back, but as the thing that sharpened you. Every scar tells a sentence. Every regret redirects. Every wound whispered something that led you back to yourself. That is the quiet force of fate. It reveals who you are beneath what you wanted. And when you can look at your life and say, "Even this, I accept," you become untouchable. Not because pain disappears, but because it no longer owns you. So let this be the year you stop negotiating with reality. Let this be the year you stop waiting for a different past. Let this be the year you love your fate. Not because it was kind, but because it shaped you. Because it clarified what matters. Because it taught you how to rise without apology. In that rise, you find more than comfort. You find meaning. You find peace. You find the steady strength that was buried beneath resistance the entire time. Fear was never your enemy. It was your signal. Not always of danger, but of depth. Of something that matters enough to shake you. The issue is not fear itself, but how we treat it. We act as if fear is a wall meant to stop us. More often it is a doorway. The test. When you see it that way, everything changes. The Stoics never tried to erase fear. They trained to understand it. Fear was not weakness. It was confusion. That tightness in your chest is not telling you to run. It is telling you something matters. So they prepared for it. They practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining what could go wrong. Not to paralyze themselves, but to strengthen their minds. When you rehearse the fall, it loses its shock. The unknown loses its grip. Fear feeds on surprise. It grows in avoidance. But when you meet it with preparation and presence, it shrinks. You realize most fears are exaggerated, not by reality, but by imagination. We overestimate the pain. We underestimate ourselves. And that gap is where fear lives. Not in the moment, but in the story we tell ourselves about it. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." Fear resisted grows larger. Fear faced becomes manageable. Still uncomfortable, but never impossible. Avoidance gives it power. Preparation takes it away. Repetition makes fear ordinary. And what becomes ordinary loses its hold. Think about how many things you feared for weeks, only to face them and realize they were survivable. That is not coincidence. That is proof. Fear is often smoke, not fire. And the only way through it is to step forward with intention. Not because you feel fearless, but because you are ready. You do not defeat fear by denying it. You defeat it by assigning it a purpose. Fear stops being a signal to retreat and becomes a guide. And once that happens, you stop running from your life and start stepping into it. Becomes the trigger for a plan. It shows you where to move next, how to grow next, what strength you need to build next. When you understand this, you stop waiting to feel confident before you act. You create confidence by moving forward while fear is still there, not after it disappears. You let yourself picture the worst case. You walk through failure, embarrassment, loss, step by step. You face each outcome and ask, what would I do? How would I react? What can I prepare right now so I'm not shocked if this happens? That isn't pessimism. That's preparation. And once you've faced it mentally, life feels lighter. If it happens, you're ready. If it doesn't, you're stronger because you prepared anyway. So many people live with constant anxiety because they've never faced fear directly. They carry blurry worries like a low fog, always there, never defined. But once you name fear, it loses its power to surprise you. You can say, I've thought this through. I've sat with it. I've accepted it. I'm ready. That's where freedom begins. Not by removing fear, but by confronting it so completely that it stops making your decisions for you. Seneca said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. That line holds a quiet truth. Most fear is a story we write ourselves, built from assumptions and stretched scenarios that almost never happen the way we expect. Still, we give those fears control because we never challenge them. We never stop and say, let me follow this fear to the end and see if it really deserves to freeze me. What changes when you stop seeing fear as a stop sign and start seeing it as a signal? A clue. A message telling you there's something here that matters. Something that scares you because it demands more from you. When your hands shake and your breath speeds up, don't retreat. Move closer. That edge you're standing on may be the limit of who you are now and the doorway to who you're becoming. Strength isn't the absence of fear. Strength is knowing how to respond when fear arrives. It's practicing the worst, not to dwell on it, but to become steady. It's seeing the risk, preparing for impact, and stepping forward anyway. Life will never be risk-free, but it doesn't have to be ruled by avoidance. It can be guided by what you choose to face. When you start living this way, another truth becomes clear. Many of the things you feared were never real. They were shadows, old memories, doubts passed down from people who never faced their own fears. You don't have to carry those anymore. You choose your fears. You face them. And in doing so, you discover something deeper than bravery. You find calm. Nothing surprises a mind that's already prepared. Let fear show you where you need to strengthen yourself, not where you are weak. Let it teach you what still needs work, not what you should run from. Most of all, let it remind you that you are still growing, still stretching, still stepping into parts of yourself that once felt unreachable. When fear appears, don't shrink. Expand. Breathe. Look it straight on and say, I've seen you before, and you don't control me anymore. Fear was never the signal to stop. It was always the call to rise. Death, too, is often misunderstood. We think of it as the end, the curtain closing, the disappearance. But it isn't. It's the pressure beneath every delayed decision, the quiet clock behind every excuse. Death isn't the enemy. It's urgency. The more you try to ignore it, the more life slips by unnoticed. Memento mori doesn't mean living in sadness. It means waking up. It means shaking yourself awake and remembering that all of this is temporary. When that truth really sinks in, something shifts. You stop assuming you'll fix things later. You stop putting off the apology. You stop waiting to live until the right moment arrives. What matters becomes clear. You realize that resentment, pride, and hesitation are costing you the one thing you can't replace: time. And the fear of death begins to fade because you're no longer wasting life pretending you have endless days. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." That's the real tragedy. Not dying, but reaching the end with words unsaid, risks untaken, love withheld. Death isn't the loss. The loss is never fully showing up for the life right in front of you. That's why Memento Mori isn't dark. It's a gift. It reminds you that every moment counts. Every look, every breath, every sentence belongs to the only life you get. Don't live it on autopilot. When you remember death, something unexpected happens. You become more alive. Not reckless. Not desperate. Intentional. Present. You slow down when you eat. You listen more carefully. You realize no conversation is small because any one of them could be the last. You start deciding who you want to be remembered as, not someday, but today. This awareness changes everything. When death stops scaring you, rejection loses its grip. Perfect timing stops being a requirement. You see that there is no perfect moment to start the book, take the risk, or speak honestly. There is only now. Tomorrow is a rumor. Next year is uncertain. But this moment belongs to you. And if you don't use it, no one will use it for you. Life is not practice. This is it. Carl Jung said, "A man who is not conscious of his mortality is not truly alive." That's the paradox. Remembering death doesn't weigh you down. It wakes you up. You stop chasing importance and start showing up with honesty and presence. You stop compromising who you are because you don't want to waste time pretending. You begin to notice how many people aren't really living. They're waiting for approval, for weekends, for permission. While time passes and the years slip by, their inner life grows smaller. It doesn't have to be that way. You can wake yourself up by remembering what's at stake. You can step back into the fire, not the fire of panic, but the fire of purpose. You don't need more time. You need clarity about how you're using the time you already have. When death becomes your teacher, every moment asks a question. Is this how I want to spend my life? Complaining, scrolling, pleasing people who wouldn't notice if I disappeared? Or creating moments I'd be proud to carry with me to the end? That's the gift of mortality. It sharpens your focus. You stop chasing forever and start investing fully in now. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Those words cut deep because they expose the truth. We don't lose life to death. We lose it to distraction. We argue, delay, and numb ourselves, forgetting that every wasted hour is a choice. When you take mortality seriously, what doesn't matter falls away. Drama, noise, and fear of judgment lose their hold. You live lighter, not because life is easier, but because you've stopped carrying what was never yours. You speak honestly. You take risks. You let go of things you once thought would last forever. And that understanding sets you free. Even love changes when you remember death. You hold people closer. You stop needing to win arguments. You understand that every goodbye could be final. Your voice softens. Forgiveness comes faster. You mean what you say. You live so that if tomorrow never comes, there's nothing left undone. That doesn't come from panic. It comes from wisdom. From knowing you were never promised more time. And that is exactly what makes today sacred. This awareness doesn't make you gloomy. It makes you sharp. It gives you the courage to walk away from anything that drains your life. You stop staying in roles and relationships that shrink you because you realize you don't owe anyone your silence. You owe yourself your aliveness. Failure looks different too. It's no longer an ending. It's proof that you tried, that you risked, that you were awake. When you carry the knowledge of mortality with balance, outcomes matter less. Presence matters more. You show up for the process because it's real and it's yours. Aristotle believed the good life wasn't about length, but about living well. Living well isn't about status or comfort. It's about alignment. About honoring what matters to you even when it's hard. About walking your path even when no one joins you. At the end, you won't remember perfection. You'll remember presence. Truth. Aliveness. So don't waste this. Don't scroll past your own life waiting for a better moment. Don't silence yourself to fit a version you've already outgrown. Let death teach urgency, not fear. Let this reminder hit you, not to scare you, but to wake you so fully that you never drift through life half asleep again. Remembering death isn't about grieving what's lost. It's about noticing what's here and giving it everything you've got. Not later. Not when it's convenient. This second, this heartbeat, because that's all anyone truly gets, and it's enough. Life often grows loud, confusing, pulling your mind in 10 directions at once. Everything seems urgent, yet hollow. In those moments, we forget the old philosophers weren't offering abstract ideas. They were giving us tools, survival guides for messy, unpredictable lives. When Stoics spoke of the 4 virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, they weren't decorating ideas. They were anchors. Without them, you drift. Wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's seeing clearly. When chaos hits, wisdom pauses you. It asks, not what's easy, but what's right. Not what feels good, but what's true. It's watching yourself before you react, stepping outside your emotion long enough to choose the next move. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Wisdom doesn't erase the obstacle. It shows how to use it. Courage comes next. Because seeing the right path doesn't make it simple. Wisdom points, but courage steps forward. When fear screams, when doubt whispers louder than instinct, courage moves anyway. You act scared. You speak with shaking voice. You take that first step, not fearless, but because something inside refuses to stay small. Courage isn't the lack of fear, it's the choice that something else matters more. Each act of courage strengthens that quiet inner voice. Then justice, the one often forgotten when hurt. Betrayal triggers revenge. You want balance, payback. But justice isn't retaliation. It's restraint guided by principle. Fairness, even unseen. Decisions rooted in steadiness, not emotion. Seneca said, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." Justice prevents acting on temporary anger. It lets you lead from strength, not spite. Finally, temperance, the rare virtue in a world chasing extremes. When temptation calls, temperance holds the line. More isn't better. Faster isn't wiser. It's the discipline to stop, say no, walk away before desire owns you. Together, these 4, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, aren't checkboxes. They're ways to live. They aren't just for philosophers. They're for anyone wanting control, not reaction. Amid chaos, they bring calm. Under pressure, they give steadiness. You won't always succeed. Sometimes you'll slip. But the aim isn't perfection. It's alignment. Actions reflecting values. Choices reflecting truth. You don't just talk about peace, you live it. You don't just admire resilience, you practice it in silence. Your inner compass becomes visible through your presence. These virtues cover all terrain. Confused? Call on wisdom. Afraid? Call on courage. Betrayed? Justice. Tempted? Temperance. They keep you grounded as the world spins. Daily, quietly, practice them, especially when no one's watching. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." Virtue shows in habits, reactions, and the way you treat people when exhausted. It holds your life together when it all falls apart. And it will fall apart. That's certain. What matters is who you've trained yourself to be. Desire, fear, shortcuts, they will pull. Without principles, you chase relief and lose yourself. But if virtue is practice, not performance, you become your own guide. Clarity grows. No crisis needed. Approval isn't required. Just the decision to do better, even in small moments. Pause before reacting, breathe before judging, check your values before letting emotions drive. That's how you shape a life that endures. Peace comes from living beyond impulse. Responding from within. You don't control everything or everyone. You stay true to your path, shaped by timeless truths, not trends. People notice, not because you're loud, but calm. Not perfect, but steady. Your presence reflects integrity quietly yet powerfully. A good life isn't less pain. It's facing life with more wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline than yesterday. You earn trust, not by answers, but by living questions with character. No perfection, just practice. And in a world obsessed with fleeting trends, that's rebellion. A quiet, lasting rebellion. When days feel heavy, return to the virtues. Ask not what feels good, but what feels true. The path is already known. Choose it again and again. That's how you become unshakable, not by avoiding storms, but by standing steady inside them. You'll feel it. Anger, shame, comparison, they're human. Emotion isn't a flaw. It signals life inside you. But strength isn't numbness. Stoicism doesn't teach suppression. Denial builds pressure that breaks chaos. True mastery is welcoming emotion with clarity. Let it speak, but never take the wheel. The goal isn't a machine. It's control over your response. In the space between feeling and action lives choice. Miss it, and you drift into habits, fear, ego. That's danger. Not emotion. Reflexive reaction. Acting on impulse trades peace for momentary release. Common, not true. You were made for more. Stoics sought transformation, not suppression. Anger, jealousy, fear, they studied. They faced it. And in facing it, they gained freedom. They leaned in with awareness instead of shrinking away in shame. That's the skill. Not avoiding the storm, but becoming someone who can stand inside it without being tossed by the wind. Impulse demands speed. It wants an immediate reaction. It doesn't care about consequences. It wants fed, fast, loud, often wrong. Discipline is different. Discipline waits. It observes. It doesn't need applause because it isn't performing. It protects what matters most. Your peace, your integrity, your path. Every time you pause instead of react, you strengthen that discipline, not with force, but with clarity. Imagine a world run entirely on impulse. Anger always becomes violence. Sadness always becomes withdrawal. Insecurity always becomes attack. That world couldn't last. Yet many live in versions of it every day. Not because they're bad, but because no one taught them another way. You don't have to be one of them. You can practice something different, something old, something powerful. Emotions only become dangerous when they take command. When you stop questioning them. When you obey without reflection. That's where regret is born. Not from feeling, but from failing to pause. The person who hurt you doesn't run your life. You do, if you take responsibility for how you handle the energy they left behind. That's real strength. Not clenching your jaw or bottling up until you explode. But opening the door to the feeling, listening, learning, then choosing your response, not from pride, not from fear, but from truth. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Your emotions aren't interruptions. They're invitations. They show you what still controls you, unsettles you, owns too much of your mind. But they also show your edges, your potential, your ability to hold discomfort without running. Each time you do, you reclaim a part of yourself lost in the noise. Don't fear emotion. Fear the story that says it owns you, that acting recklessly is the only way to feel deeply. It isn't. The strongest feel more than most. They've learned to hold it, to sit with it, to move through it without becoming it. That's what makes them grounded, trusted, unshakable in a world moving too fast. You don't gain freedom by avoiding pain. You gain it by facing it with awareness, by choosing your next move from presence, not panic. Then emotion loses control. It may visit, but it won't stay or define you. That's what the Stoics knew. You can learn it too. Power isn't in feeling less. It's in using the space between feeling and action to choose your life instead of reacting. It won't be perfect. Some days you'll snap, say too much, retreat when you wanted to rise. That's the process. The goal isn't erasing mistakes. The goal is returning to awareness faster each time. Shortening the gap between reaction and reflection. Learning your triggers and responding as a student, not a victim. That's how you grow. Break cycles. Become someone you trust. Emotions are messengers. You are the author. Once you realize that, everything changes. You move through life with understanding, patience, clarity. That's real control. Not forcing stillness, but being still within whatever rises. A quiet confidence comes from not being owned by what you feel. Not denying it, not drowning in it, but standing, breathing, choosing your words, your next step, not to impress anyone, but to live in alignment with who you want to be. That decision is the most powerful you'll ever make. The world will provoke, test, confuse you. Your job is simple: stay grounded, stay clear. Use the space between emotion and action to lead toward a life built on intention, not impulse. Guide your emotions, and you become what most never try: calm in chaos, clear in conflict, unmoved by noise, profoundly alive. Most recoil at the word discipline. They see cold, harsh, rigid rules, a life of saying no. But real discipline isn't punishment. It's protection. It earns freedom. Without it, desire rules. You say yes when you shouldn't. Delay what matters. Abandon the path for fleeting comfort. You become a passenger, tossed by impulse, distraction, pleasure. Discipline puts you at the wheel. You build something rare: self-trust. Not just in calm, but when the world pulls in 100 directions. The voice inside says, no matter what comes, I will show up for myself. Then things shift. You enter a room with alignment, not arrogance. Speak clearly. Move with purpose. No chasing, life reflects inner order. But no longer scattered, centered. Carl Jung said each of us has an unknown self. The stronger, clearer version is reached through discipline. The path connects who you are with who you're meant to be. The bridge is built one decision at a time. Not drama. Not perfection. Quiet, consistent alignment. Waking early when you don't want. Saying no to temptation. Keeping private promises to yourself. Each step carves out that deeper version. They begin to lead. Discipline gives boundaries not to trap, but to anchor. In a world glamorizing chaos, doing what's necessary without applause is rebellion. Stoics' new structure is the soil of greatness. A tree grows strong by rooting down before reaching up. You don't need more options. Fewer, better ones. One path walked daily, even boring, even unseen. Freedom isn't doing whatever, whenever. That life often feels empty. Without direction, freedom is chaos. Chaos becomes suffering. Stay up late. Eat anything. Skip what matters. Give in to distractions. Then wonder why anxious, weak, lost. Not mystery. Without discipline, energy reacts. With it, energy creates. That's the difference. Discipline isn't just saying no. It's saying yes to the life you want. Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Mastery isn't a moment of willpower. It's rhythm. Choosing discomfort today to build peace tomorrow. Practicing small things so big things don't scare you. Command habits, command your future. Discipline sharpens mind. Steadies heart. Teaches endurance, navigation of pressure, resisting quit when inconvenient. Real strength builds in silence, repetition, the sacred space between excuse and execution. Not glamorous, and that's the point. Strongest people don't wear discipline like a costume. They carry it like a compass. You feel it in movement, speech, refusal to be pulled off alignment. Identity built on more than mood or approval. They don't need motivation. Commitment is enough. No proof to the world, too busy proving to themselves. Most pain isn't from doing too little. It's from knowing what to do and avoiding it. That tension, that inner pull between who you are and could be, doesn't fade. It grows until you numb it or face it. Discipline faces it, not with force but honesty. Look in the mirror. I don't need perfection, but I refuse passivity. Not controlling every outcome, but controlling what you bring to each moment. Your focus, presence, effort. That's what you own. That's your power. And when you start living like this, when your daily actions match what you truly value, you begin to feel something rare. Not the peace of life being easy, but the peace of knowing you are no longer betraying yourself. That's the reward of discipline. Not applause. Not recognition. True inner stillness. The kind that can't be faked. The kind that whispers, "You're on the right path. Keep going. You will fail. You will stumble." That's part of it. But now you don't spiral. You don't hide. You rise again, not out of guilt, but because your identity has shifted. You're no longer someone waiting for perfect conditions to act. You act because you've chosen to. Because you've seen the cost of drifting and made a quiet vow never to go back. Discipline isn't something you tack onto life. It becomes the foundation, the invisible framework that shapes everything else. Relationships, health, work, peace. None of it lasts without discipline. But with it, you create something lasting, something real, something that carries you through storms and keeps you grounded in doubt. That's real freedom. Not needing to escape life because you've finally built one you respect. Not needing constant stimulation because silence no longer scares you. Not needing shortcuts because you accept the long path. Discipline teaches you to be okay with who you are without needing anything extra. So next time it's hard. Next time your mind says skip it, you've done enough, or try later, remember this. Every excuse is a delay in becoming who you already are beneath the noise. Every moment you choose discipline, you're not just building habits. You're returning home to your higher self. The self that doesn't chase. The self that quietly knows exactly what needs to be done and does it again and again until you look back, not with regret, but with respect for the life built through every quiet yes, every strong no, every moment you chose alignment over comfort. That's freedom. And it starts with discipline. You are not a finished product. You never were. You never will be. You are a work in motion. Not a label. Not a box to check. Not your worst day. Not your deepest wound. Not even your greatest win. You are something stronger. You hold the chisel. Life gives you marble, often raw, heavy, cracked. It doesn't arrive polished. It doesn't arrive easy. That's not the point. The point is you are the sculptor, and the sculpture is your life. Most people don't see this. They think they are the stone. That what happened to them defines them. Too poor. Too broken. Too late. Too far gone. None of it matters unless you accept it as final. Unless you put the chisel down. That's the quiet tragedy. Not the marble, but forgetting you can shape it. You weren't born fixed. You were born with tools, thought, action, reflection, courage. It's easy to blame the marble, to point at cracks. Look what life gave me. But the Stoics taught to look inward. This is what I've been given. What will I do? Your choices are not small. Every morning you rise early to protect peace instead of drowning in distraction. That's a cut. Every moment you choose discipline over indulgence. That's refinement. Every time you pause before reacting in anger or fear and choose a higher response. That's sculpting. Over time, these choices build. A shape forms. It looks like the person you're meant to be. The chisel isn't always loud. Sometimes it's staying silent when you want to defend yourself. Sometimes it's holding a boundary when your voice shakes. Sometimes it's just not quitting. One more rep, one more hour, one more step. Forgettable moments? Defining. While the world watches for drama and applause, the sculptor works in quiet, in grind, in the space between noise and clarity. No one else can sculpt your life. Opinions, tools, criticism, they can come, but they don't hold your hand. Only you choose if today's actions echo regret or resilience. Only you carry the chisel when easier to blame. That's the power people forget. The power to shape through action, not avoidance. You can evolve. You can change shape. You can say, I no longer want to live like this. That's mastery. Sculptors don't cling to every mistake. They don't panic when pieces break off. They adjust, reimagine, adapt. That's human. Flexible in form. Grounded in purpose. The masterpiece isn't behind you. It's in every moment you pick up the chisel again. The problem isn't flawed marble. The problem is forgetting what can be done with it. Look at people who faced trauma, loss, abandonment, yet became light for others. Not because life was kind, but because they turned pain into polish. They didn't sculpt perfection, they sculpted meaning. True artistry is soul, not symmetry. Substance, not surface. Waiting for better marble, a cleaner slate, that's not shaping. Waiting leaves the marble untouched. Nothing erodes potential faster than neglect. Life doesn't ask you to wait. Life asks you to engage, to do what you can with what you have where you are. While others wait, you chisel. While others wait to feel ready, you create. You sculpt clarity from chaos, stillness from stress, purpose from pain. It won't always look perfect. Dust in your eyes. Pieces break. That's how masterpieces are made. Not in theory, but in motion, in mess, in raw moments that never hit the highlight reel. You don't need a blueprint. You need commitment. Don't let your life be a lump of wasted marble. Take this year, take 2026, do more than survive. Sculpt. Don't just get through days. Shape them. Turn routine into ritual. Struggle into strategy. Silence into strength. No secret tool coming. You have what you need. Thought, choice, time. Time above all. It's not infinite. Every day passes a piece of marble. Every day you shape it as a legacy. Let habits chip away the unnecessary. Reveal your outline. Not the version that conforms or hides, but the one that stands in storms and says, "This is who I've decided to be." That version won't come by accident. Effort, repetition, attention, patience. Quiet power in knowing the future isn't found. It's carved. Not all at once. Day by day. Hour by hour. 1,000 invisible moments leave visible results. One day someone looks at your life, not the real, but the real story. They see strength, integrity, clarity in every curve. That wasn't luck. That was art. You refused to live unshaped. So the question isn't what life handed you. The question is what you'll carve from it. You don't need perfect. You need intention. One choice, one moment, one cut at a time. The masterpiece isn't waiting to be found. It's waiting to be shaped. Pick up the chisel. Your life is not a draft. It's the final piece. If this hits something in you, another video is on screen right now. Watch it next.